Welcome to PPR Podcast number 220. We are joined, I am joined by my partner in crime, my longtime friend now, who hasn't said a kind word to me in over a decade. His name is Bert Grossman.
Bert, like Sonny and Cher. Remember Cher used
Bert,
to always...
you just turned what?
Stop.
67?
Stop.
No, what are you now?
That's the year I was born.
66?
So figure it out. Do your math. I was born in 67.
Bert just had a birthday, but I don't know what
You forgot it. Just
it was.
move on.
Forgot it. I never knew it.
Let's celebrate Brandon.
All right, let's celebrate. Let's celebrate our guests. Introductions, please.
Jordan Congdon. So many facets to this young man. I'll start with Saints kicker.
Yep.
And then we'll just go from there because it's a long list of things.
All right, make him appear in the center screen. There he is. Welcome back, Jordan. You were such a good guest on the show a week ago, and I had so many more questions I wanted to ask you that I felt it was imperative that you join us in the podcast. I appreciate that you accepted. Thank you so much.
No, thank you guys for the opportunity. It's awesome to be here with you guys.
Jordan, you have so many things going on. Let's just start you grew up in City Heights, correct?
Yep. Yeah, just a block down from Crawford High School.
So I spent a lot of time at Hoover High School, and I know the area pretty well. Probably one of the most diverse places, I was going to say in San Diego, but maybe in the country. And your parents started a missionary there?
Yeah, so my parents started the organization that we're a part of called the More Ministries officially in 1980. I was born in 86 and we moved to San Diego in 1988, 1989. Because the organization was growing, we were having a lot of groups starting to come to Tijuana, the north of Mexico, to build houses. And at that time, a part of the plan was to start a church in City Heights, San Diego. So we moved just a block from Crawford. The church was located on the corner, just off the 15 and on El Cajon Boulevard. And so that's where I grew up. I grew up between City Heights and spending time in northern Mexico with church groups, with youth groups, any kind of groups that want to come build houses in the north of Mexico for families needing a house.
So service was ingrained in you at a very young age then, serving others, was it not?
Yeah, it was just part of the life. My parents are amazing people. We actually just celebrated yesterday, celebration of life for my mom. She passed away on February 7th. And they actually met in an orphanage in Tijuana, Mexico, and fell in love. Kind of a crazy little love story that they had. Fell in love, and long story short, started an organization that I don't have the exact numbers on the top of my head, but hundreds of thousands of volunteers have come to the north of Mexico to build houses. I want to say the number of houses, again, I don't have the exact number, but tens of thousands of houses that have been able to help change the lives of countless families living in northern Mexico.
So spending time in that area, I have to assume you started soccer before you started football, correct?
Yeah, I played soccer since I was 4 years old. Started in AYSO and then joined the Crusaders Soccer Club and went from there. My dream was actually to play professional soccer. My problem was, and it's what ended up kind of keeping me from making it as a pro, which became my next dream as an NFL kicker, was I lacked speed and explosivity. So that's where kind of kicking came in, is from a young age, I could always kick a soccer ball very accurate and with good distance. And so tried kicking footballs at the Crawford High School football field right there with my dad and just fell in love with it and felt like it was something I could do.
So you and Paul had similar limitations on your athletic.
You put these hands on a faster body, and I would have played in the NFL.
Well, that's what he just said, basically.
I know, but unfortunately, there's just not a market for receivers who run a 5.2 40. You know.
You're being generous. You're being real generous.
It was an elusive 5.2.
All right.
What my coach says, I could get up through the gears, but then there was no fourth gear.
Wow. Well, you know what, George? You said something interesting there, because I think, and we'll get into it more, but you said it's every kid's dream to play in the NFL or play professional soccer, but a dream is different than a calling, and then you seem to get a calling. What's the difference between the two to you?
Yeah, so my dream to go to the NFL started in around middle school. It was just kind of one of those things I shared yesterday at my mom's funeral. My mom and dad always got on the page with me of what I wanted to do and what my passions were about. Unfortunately, a lot of pastors' kids, missionary kids, their parents can get lost in the work, and it's very important work, don't get me wrong. But kids can felt like they're put to the side a little bit. And my parents did a really, really good job of never doing that. And so I honestly came to my mom after starting to enjoy kicking and said, hey, I want to start kicking. And I found this camp that I want to go to. And she took me. We set it up. We went to Nevada, Reno. I kicked for the first time. The people there said I was good. And so we just followed that path. And from there, I was at a Catholic middle school because also part of the story is I went to a language immersion school, learned Spanish growing up, had to switch schools in 6th grade because my English reading and writing were behind. I was actually better at Spanish at the time. And so I had to switch schools to get ready for high school. Changed to a Catholic middle school. I went to Santa Sophia over in Spring Valley and started to get introduced to St. Augustine High School. And as I was there thinking through what I want to do and starting to want to kick and kind of getting the vision and the dream to go to university and be a kicker and maybe in the NFL, Brian Courtney and John Courtney had been at Saints. They had set the path for great kickers at St. Augustine. Coach Jerry Ralph at the time was known for using kickers and letting kickers kick field goals, which a lot of coaches weren't doing. And it just felt like the right fit. And so Saints was an awesome fit. Loved all boys school. Would love to have it. Actually have 4 boys now. Would love to have all boys education in high school for our boys, but we'll see what happens. Time will tell. But I had that dream. And I think the difference probably between dream and calling is there are similarities in them. But a dream, I can have my own human dream, my own desires for my own life. And I think at the end of the day, the question is, does that line up with the heart of God and what God wants? And there's this fusion of the two that hopefully ideally happens, I think, at the end of the day. And so while I've looked at it this way, while I wanted to go to the NFL and kick professionally, that part of my dream never happened. However, I get to work with young people today who were able to help get university scholarships. And how cool would it be one day one of these kids goes professional? And the fusion of a dream and a calling, I didn't get my exact dream, but if one of these kids that we get to work with on a daily basis goes professional, how much more fulfilling that will be, because the dream that was for me was fulfilled through a young person or even through our own kids, you know?
It doesn't take a genius to put together that faith is a big part of your life. We live in a society now where talking about it publicly is almost frowned upon. You know, you're out of fear that you're going to upset somebody. How do you handle that?
Yeah, honestly, in the last year and a half, 2 years, I've changed a lot because I was more on the cautious side of kind of talking publicly, and so particularly in this type of setting because of that. But I've become convinced, and I tie it to, I feel, a closeness and relationship with God that's happened in the last couple of years because of many different reasons. But just a reality that God's loving. Unfortunately, a lot of times the way we can express things as being Christian. It can come across hateful and can come across judgmental. And we don't need to do that. There's nothing wrong with speaking truth to culture and to the situation. However, we can do it with kindness and with love. And again, yesterday at the funeral for my mom, I shared yesterday an amazing story. As I grew up in Crusaders Soccer Club, one of my coaches was Muslim. And I don't know if my mom and dad ever had a faith conversation with him. I'm sure they did, knowing the people that they are. But can't remember what time of year it was, but it was a time where he was practicing fasting because of his religious beliefs. And my mom would show up. We'd show up to practice 2 or 3 times a week, and we'd show up to practice every time with this huge basket full of fruit and all the other foods that he could eat at that time. And I learned from my mom and my dad from a very young age, it doesn't matter what you have to say if they don't know that you love them. And so my parents set the example very early on. We have to make sure people know that they love us, that know that we love them. People need to know that we love them. And from that point, there might be an opportunity for us to share our faith, to share Jesus with them, and to share the love of God, that God loves them a whole lot and has great plans for them.
Now, I don't want to, because I skip around, I have no segue, Paul will tell you, so it's going to go subject to subject because I have brain damage. I wanted to go back to...
Thanks.
Well, it's a caveat.
Well, that's why
everybody.
you're affordable, at least.
Thank you. That's why I don't get paid, George. I want to go back because I coach the Saints. I remember you being there. I think I was disappointed. Paul probably was too when you didn't pick San Diego State. You went to Nebraska. You had this all-American, amazing first year. I was, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but I was a D1 athlete at college, same thing. Usually when there's a little drop-off and somebody leaves, something personal is going on there that you don't like. Whether it's your behavior, whether it's a crowd you're running with, whatever it is, to get away from that. Was that your experience, or you just wanted to come home?
There was a lot of stuff going on. But yeah, you're 100% right. The way I look at it is, I mean, everybody at that time wanted to go to SC because Matt Leinart was there, Reggie Bush was there, Pete Carroll. It was crazy. It was Hollywood. And at the end of the day, if SC would have offered me, that's where I would have gone. But they didn't. They offered a guy, Troy Van Blarcom, and that was cool. And so growing up in San Diego, got the offer from San Diego State, was very interested in it. It was the only offer I had at the time and was accepting of that. And then Nebraska came and they invited me out to go on a trip. And I had never experienced anything like the Husker Nation, man. Like, I had never been in a stadium full of 85,000 people. People know who you are. It just wasn't the experience that we had here. And fell in love with the program, fell in love with the people there. Coach Callahan had a great vision for what we were going to try to do. The recruiting class that we had that year in 2005 was picking up steam. There was a lot of good recruits that were coming in. And we bought into this vision that in the time that we would be there, in the 4 to 5 years that we would all be there, that we would be national champions. And so having that experience and going to Nebraska, I came home and I was like, yeah, I want to do it. And my dad was like, well, let's take some time. And within that next week, you know how the pressure can be sometimes, especially as a kicker, you don't know what offers you're going to get. And again, like, I didn't have the massive legs, so I didn't have a ton of offers coming in. Made the decision that Nebraska was the place. And I look at it as it was a good step for me, that God was protecting me, because you go to SC, you go to Hollywood, you go to LA, there's all kinds of stuff that you can get involved in that just wasn't available in Lincoln, Nebraska. And the reality is, when I went to college, I wanted to have fun. I was just a normal 18-year-old wanting to play football, wanting to study, and wanting to have friends, have a good time with friends, going out, partying, drinking, all that type of stuff. And a year and a half into that process, I was not happy with where I was at in the lifestyle that I was living. And the way I just look back on it, more than anything with hindsight, is just God was saying, okay, it's time to change. It's time to take a different path. And within that was what you guys asked about, the dream. I started slowly but surely realizing I wasn't cut out for the NFL. I didn't have the abilities to make that. And so that dream started to adjust a bit. I ended up going to SC. At the time, I was looking at USC and Cal. Went to SC because right in South Central was starting to field that calling to start working in communities like my parents have for the last 45, 50 years. Communities where there's poverty, where there's drug addiction, where there's alcoholism, where there's gang involvement. And you go to USC and it's right there in the middle of it. You walk right down the street and you're able to find that. And so it was a step to go play at SC, to play for Coach Carroll, to be in that environment was absolutely amazing. But also to start taking that next step of kind of returning to the foundation that my parents had set and searching for that calling, which has led to us where we are in Puerto Morelos.
Hey, I want to talk, I'm going to focus on your post-athletic career. I think that's the more significant portion of your life. But just a couple well, I do. Come on.
I have no value here. Jordan, I'm sorry. We bicker a lot, but he hit me and broke my tooth last week. And
you know what? I'm not done yet. Jordan, just quickly, what was your record against Cathedral? They were Cathedral by then, right? They weren't.
Saints was much better then.
No, it was still Uni when I was there.
All right, so it was Uni. What was your record against them?
I want to say in varsity, so I would play a soft 3-0.
3-0. So you didn't lose to your arch rival. Any big kicks in high school that you remember?
So my longest kick in high school was a 53-yarder. We were playing at Patrick Henry High School. I go back. I was put into to kick. We went to El Capitan as a sophomore, and it was the first game of playing on varsity, and kicked a game-tying field goal. I can't remember how long it was. It was like 30 yards. It wasn't a long one, but it was a big deal. Like, if I hadn't made that, who knows what the trajectory would have been. But it went in, and we tied the game, and then we had a really good season. Ended up playing against Marian Catholic in the final and lost. But yeah, beyond that, just a lot of great moments. I remember one of the biggest thing about high school is the coaches would always tell us, these are the best times you'll have in sports, because the environment, you're playing with your best friends and all that. And when you're in the moment, you're like, no, I'm trying to go D1. It's going to be better and all this and that. And I want to play pro. But it's the reality. Like, you're playing with your best friends. If you get to college and you get to have that, it's amazing, and some people do. But for the most part, guys that are especially going D1, they're trying to go pro. And so it's always thinking about the next step. But that high school moment was amazing, and had amazing experience at St. Augustine.
You know, they're big into service. The school emphasizes serving the community. But when I asked you the question, I was kind of surprised at your answer. You said, no, what St. Augustine was doing didn't really drive what I'm doing now. I guess it's because you were already doing it, right?
Yeah, I mean, my parents took me down to TJ with from being a baby. Like, it was just what I was born into. And then with the church in City Heights, it was just our lifestyle. Like, that's just what we do. And so, again, going back to that thing about calling, like, this is part of what I was born into, is what our family legacy is supposed to continue to be.
So when you're down like on the Yucatan Peninsula there, like around Cancun, is that where you're at?
Yeah, our community is called Puerto Morelos, and it is 30 minutes south of Cancun. So it's right between Cancun and Playa del Carmen.
Did you go there? I'm sorry, go ahead.
It's just a community. It's kind of a small beach town. It was a fisherman's town, and yeah, there's just lots of, it's an interesting place, because you think about it, there's this highway that separates the beach side and then the community that we're a part of. And on the beach side, obviously, you have a lot of expats, you have a lot of tourism and vacation, you have restaurants and hotels and resorts, and then on our side, you have the normal Mexican experience. And it's kind of, you're living in the midst of two worlds right beside each other all at once.
So when you went down there, was the plan to follow in your parents' footsteps and build houses? And how'd you transition to, because you're more sports focused now, aren't you?
Yeah, so roughly 20 years ago, my dad got invited to take some groups down to the Cancun area and build some houses. And that was successful. And so as this vision and plan developed for our location where we are in Puerto Morelos, there was a piece of land where we were going to come in and partner with a good friend of my dad's and build a pastor's training campus, international pastor's training campus, and then build houses in the area. And so when my wife and I moved down there in 2016, that was the vision. And so we really spent a year down there working on that project, working on the campus, and then working on building houses. And where the project was for the campus, it's really interesting, like kind of land dynamics. But basically, long story short, we could never build securely on that piece of property with the type of investment that it would be and have security for that. So as we were there for a year, we started talking with our leadership team and saying, hey, it doesn't look like that's going to happen. And they started to give us some freedom in just sorting out, okay, we'll just be there, get a feeling for what the community needs. Because alongside that, we were building houses. And where we are exactly in Puerto Morelos, it's more urbanly developed. It's not like where we work in the north, where it's more rural and you have families getting pieces of land and they're living in dirt and shacks. We live in a place where these housing developers have come in and they've built small houses or apartments, and families are living there. And so what we actually built was smaller than what they had or what they were renting. And they're actually seen as what we say bodegas, so like storage spaces. So we built some houses in the community, and we're just seeing that they weren't being lived in, they weren't being used. And so again, we talked to our leadership and just said, hey, it doesn't feel like house building is what we're supposed to do. And the amazing thing is our leadership said, well, have the freedom to sort out what we're there supposed to do. And so we joined a local church, and we spent some time there. We're going to know some families and know some kids. And the biggest needs that we saw that we could jump into immediately were the spaces of education and sports. And in particular, in education at that time was teaching English and then starting a sports program. Our house where we live is a block from a sports facility, and it was literally being used for kids' sports 2 days a week. In that year, in 2016, it was being used for soccer, and that was it. And our thought process, my wife and I were looking at each other, was like, well, that should be full of kids. And so we got this idea that maybe we start a sports program. And so that's where the Puerto Morelos Tortugas came out of. And it's interesting because the first time I actually went down there, my dad was telling me the fastest growing sport in the region is American football. And growing up in San Diego in the north of Mexico, I was like, Dad, you're crazy. Nobody plays football in Mexico. But it was the fastest growing sport at the time. And I think currently the fastest growing sport now is flag football. And so we decided that it'd be best to start with flag football and tackle football and start our program that way. And with the end goal of it being multi-sport, getting kids well-trained in sport, earning scholarships and all that type of stuff.
That's fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating, Jordan. Wow.
Just one follow-up.
Sure.
So I guess the biggest thing, the question I'd have is, down there, there's such a class structure where it's different here. It's like you can ask any kid here what you want to be, and they might say president, they might say professional athlete. Down there, it's almost, how do you get it out of their expectation that, no, I'm just going to go work at the resort, or I'm just going to go work in a restaurant, or how do you raise their expectation?
Get them to dream bigger?
Yeah, get them to dream bigger. Because they don't seem to, in Mexico, it's not the same as here. They don't seem to have that, I can dream big and be president if I want. How do you change that?
Yeah, one of the most impactful moments that, for me personally, being down there was we started to get this group of 12 and 13-year-olds that wanted to play tackle football, even though they had never played before. It was an amazing experience. I like starting new things and just going forward, and if we lose all the games, it's cool. But we were sitting there talking to them about that exact thing. And I was relating it as a similar experience to being in LA, being in the housing complexes in Watts, in Compton, and some of the conversations I remember having with kids there, and they would do exactly what you say. They had an idea of what they wanted to be. If we talked to them about being a professional athlete, they'd be like, absolutely yes. Well, they might not know exactly the process to get there. They're on board for that. But we sat there one day with those kids, and I asked them the question, do you just want a normal life? With the expectation that every kid would say no. But every kid raised their hand and said yes. And what does a normal life mean? It means security. It means a sustainable job. It means families healthy. It means parents are together and taking care of kids. It means the basics, right? It means survival at the end of the day. And so that's been a major part of our work, which has been successful in some ways and arguably unsuccessful in others, but it's trying to change a paradigm, trying to change a thought process that there can be more to life than that. The reality is it is very difficult because family units there work as family units. The individualization that we have here in America is very different to the situation that's in Mexico. And so families have to work together to bring income together, which in some ways is very beautiful. But it forces kids to quickly be moved on out of schools and into work. And we run into a lot of families where, for me, it was like, you're getting an education, you're going to university, if you can go to a master's, you're going to do all that. For families that we get to work with, a lot of times it's you go to school if you want to, and if you don't want to, even as an 11, 12-year-old, well, you got to get to work. And it's just the situation. And so in the work we do, we try to also respond to those needs and make that not an issue for families as much as we can, where education is seen as an opportunity to grow and develop. Because if that child goes off to get a university degree or stays in the local area and gets a university degree, their opportunities are just going to be that much more. But a lot of times survival and just surviving as a family is put in as the most important thing. And it makes sense. It's part of the deal. But we do hope to help kids get beyond that.
So impressive. If you could have one more conversation with your mother, what would the topic be?
I haven't thought about that, honestly.
I always, my mom passed away about 10 years ago. And I don't know what, if I could talk to her again, I think I don't know, is your mom still with us?
She's still with us. She's mean to me, though, so I don't have this problem.
Well, no, I mean, your mom's a big part of your life, and I think she would be. I'm sure she expressed it prior to her passing, but the pride she must feel for you and for what you have done and how you've taken the family excuse the vernacular here, the family business, and have taken it further. I think she must feel immense pride watching this when she tunes in later from above. I think she. Do you agree with that assessment?
Yeah, my mom was never short on making sure I knew how proud she was of me. And yesterday was beautiful, and just meeting and seeing lots of people for the first time in a long time. It was something that they would say is just how much my mom would light up when the conversation turned to me, to our family, to my wife and our boys. And yeah, I mean, I remember, so my mom had Parkinson's, and it had progressed a lot towards the end, and she had a couple infections. So the last few weeks were pretty difficult for her. But yeah, at the end of the day, it's not even necessarily a conversation. My mom and I had an amazing relationship. We talked about everything. She was my best friend. I would just love to have another moment by her side, honestly. That's it, even if it was just there in bed.
I second that. I second that. Hey, we're going to wrap this up. If I said, okay, for $100,000, you have to split the uprights from 42 yards, could you do it?
I would do it, because we need $100,000 to expand our school. We gotta grow our school, man. We operate a school and a childcare out of a 2-story just building, a house building, and it's beautiful. Some dear friends of ours gave us the opportunity to be in that space, and that's what we need to be able to expand it. Our plan is to grow by a grade or 2 every year, ideally 2, because there's a lot of kids that need what we're doing. So we're doing a Christian English immersion education, which we've talked about, that even if a kid has to move in 3 years, if a kid gets through middle school and they have to move, if they come out immersed in English, that they are fluent in English, their job opportunities and the future that they can have will be completely changed. And just talking about the faith aspect, we believe in the importance of teaching a biblical worldview, because like you said, we are in times that it is not discussed. It's almost offensive, but it's what we believe in. It's beautiful. It's actually, yeah, it's a true love story of God's love for us and wanting us to love him back and be his children. So we see it as an opportunity, and we believe it can not only change the trajectory of child's life that goes through the education process, but hopefully the families as well.
I think on that note, we'll call it. Jordan, here's the deal.
Jordan, you're one of the few people we could actually continue this for probably 2 hours.
Oh yeah, we Jordan.
Usually we're dying to get out of here in 20 minutes.
Well, no,
We can keep going. I have time.
No, Jordan.
All right, I got a question.
Okay, shoot.
You didn't build that house you're in, did you?
No, I'm actually at the McGarry's house. Mike and Pat McGarry, who were my best friends in high school, Kevin and Mary Ann McGarry, have been unbelievably generous to allow us to stay here while we've been here. We're actually overstaying our time that we had planned for in the beginning. But yeah, it's been a beautiful time. They actually have a batting cage and this beautiful turf grass in the backyard, which has been awesome for 4 boys. And thinking about what we would pay for an Airbnb, they have helped us out a ton. It's awesome.
What were you going to criticize the architecture?
No, I was going to say that's where you get your $100,000, whoever's house it is.
We're having conversations.
Jordan, this is not the last time you and I are going to chat, but I need a couple favors from you, because I know what we're going to. I'm going to wait for you, so I can't start posting this stuff until you send me some pictures. I want as many stills that you own that's not going to get me sued. And I want, if you could send some pictures of you and your mom, I would really appreciate that, because I know I'm going to, the way that we do this is right when we get done, I'm going to put this up on YouTube raw. And then I start clipping out my favorite parts and put them up on my social media with pictures on top. And that's where we get all our traction. So I need video of any projects that you have, stuff that you shot down in Mexico, of the sports fields that you're doing, working with kids. Send me all that stuff. I know you probably sent it to Tommy, but here's my email. It's prudy@kusi.com. prudy@kusi.com. Photos and videos, please oversend to me. Even if you got them and you can get them to me, I'm going to wait. I'm not going to post until you send me some of those images. And I need anything you have from your high school career. I've got some stuff, obviously, that I'll pull. But anything from your high school career, anything from where I'm going to do the $100,000 kick, talking about faith, any pictures of the church, and the best of times, any pictures from high school. Those are the three things I think I'm going to do. And any soccer pictures you might have of you playing youth soccer, please pass them along. And I'm sure you're swamped with the kids and everything, but the sooner you can get them to me, the sooner I can get to work. So I would really appreciate if you could get on that. And then I'm going to, you drop me an email and I'll give you all my contact information. Please pass along your phone number so you and I can stay in touch, because I suspect this is not going to be the last time you and I chat. All right? Well, unless, of course, you don't want to.
No, let's keep it going.
All right.
It's awesome.
Yeah. Well, you know what? We have some people to watch, so we can help out. Let us help out. You know,
yeah.
we want to see this thing grow as big as you want it to grow. And you have the dubious honor of being our longest podcast, which we're going to call an end to. PPR Podcast number 220. Unless you've got anything else.
No, I'll let him go.
All right, we broke the 30-minute mark, and we usually get around out to 22 minutes. So, Jordan, that's how much we enjoyed your conversation. Pictures, my condolences to your mom's passing, and you know the only advice I could say is the broken heart over time heals with loving memories, and you get over the grief, and the grief turns into just fond remembrances. And you know what? My mom's been gone since 2016, and I still have daily conversations with her, and I suspect you probably are going to find the same phenomenon. It's just a different way of communicating. So, sir, God bless, Godspeed, and PPR Podcast 220 is over. Take it away, Jordan. Thank you.